Most men are raised on a flawed and emotionally costly blueprint for love, a script written by societal expectations, romanticized media, and well-intentioned but misguided advice. From a young age, they're conditioned to believe that neediness is a virtue, that the more they demonstrate dependence, the more secure and loved they will be. This conditioning teaches them that love is earned through relentless sacrifice, that a woman's approval is the ultimate prize, and that their own mission in life is secondary to the role of being a devoted partner. They operate under the assumption that sacrificing their ambitions, constantly seeking validation, and being perpetually available are the highest demonstrations of loyalty. They confuse obsession with dedication, and they believe that by handing a woman the reins to their emotional world, they are proving their commitment. This is the grand bargain they make, their autonomy in exchange for the hope of security. But here is the uncomfortable, paradigm-shifting truth that shatters this entire construct: a woman does not, and ultimately cannot, respect a man who needs her more than he needs himself. She may enjoy the comfort of his devotion. She may bask in the safety of his predictability. But she cannot genuinely admire the man who abandons his own path to orbit her world. When a man makes her moods the compass for his life, he ceases to be a partner and becomes a satellite. This behavior does not inspire deep, lasting attraction. It quietly inspires contempt and a loss of respect. The foundation of genuine desire is not built on clingy need, but on quiet strength and self-completion. A woman is drawn to a man who possesses an inner world so rich and compelling that she wants to be a part of it, not one who has no world without her. The critical moment of failure occurs, and a man voluntarily hands over his frame, the invisible structure of his reality, his core principles, and his life's mission. The moment he allows her emotions to dictate his actions, her needs to override his boundaries, and her approval to become his metric for self-worth, he loses himself. In doing so, he becomes predictable and pliable. He is no longer a man to be respected, but a resource to be managed. A woman may enjoy the superficial safety and control she has over such a man, but she will never truly respect him because we cannot respect what we have power over. The real power and the true beginning of authentic respect and attraction starts only when a man stands firm in his unshakable independence. It is when he demonstrates, through his actions and unwavering focus, that he is a complete individual with or without her. He becomes a man she can truly value. His wholeness is not a threat to the relationship. It is the very thing that makes a real relationship possible. When a man truly internalizes and embodies the principle of non-need, he initiates a profound shift in the relational dynamic, moving from a posture of pursuit to one of magnetic attraction. He ceases to interact from a place of lack and desperation, and instead operates from a foundation of conscious choice. This is the critical distinction that changes everything. He wants her, but he does not need her. His sense of validation is generated internally. It's drawn from his commitment to his mission and the integrity of his own standards. His emotional stability is not contingent on her moods or affections, and his identity remains firmly rooted in who he is, independent of her presence. This self-possession is not an act. It is the core of his character. This new, centered energy is immediately disruptive to the established, often unspoken, rules of engagement. A woman accustomed to being the gravitational center of a man's emotional universe finds his independence deeply unsettling. His calm focus creates a vacuum where her expected control used to be. In response, she will inevitably, and often unconsciously, initiate a series of tests. These are not mere arguments or mood swings. They are strategic probes designed to locate a weakness in his frame, to find the lever that will prove he is as invested in her approval as all the others. She may pick fights over trivialities, create emotional chaos, withdraw affection, or even issue threats of leaving all, with the primary goal of seeing if she still holds the power to provoke a reaction. To make him budge from his center, the man who genuinely does not need her, however, will not take the bait. He understands that to explain is to plead, to defend is to acknowledge her court, to chase is to validate her method of control. His most powerful response is often a calm, unshakable silence in the face of the storm. This non-reaction is not passive aggression. It is the ultimate demonstration of strength. It communicates a simple, undeniable message that resonates louder than any declaration of love or lengthy justification. You are a welcome addition to my life, but you are not the source of it. You don't complete me. You can only add to the wholeness I already possess, and only if your presence aligns with my peace and purpose. His steadfastness exposes her tactical chaos for what it truly is: empty leverage. It dismantles piece by piece the illusion of control she has always relied upon, revealing that her power was never inherent, but was always alone granted by the neediness of weaker men, the intense reaction provoked by a man's genuine independence stems from a deep-seated psychological equation, where love is mistakenly conflated with influence. From a young age, many are subtly taught that their significance in a relationship is measured by their ability to steer their partner's emotions, redirect their focus, and make them alter their priorities. The power to elicit a reaction, be it jealousy, anxiety, or pursuit, misinterpreted as a barometer of care and commitment. When a man stands firm in his own frame, impervious to these levers, this entire foundation of perceived significance crumbles. She is suddenly stripped of her familiar tools for navigating intimacy. Left without a map and a territory defined by his self-contained certainty, this loss of influence triggers a fundamental fear. A man who does not need her is, by definition, free. He is free to walk away, free to prioritize his growth, and free to demand respect without negotiation. While this freedom and the inherent power it conveys are magnetically attractive, they are equally terrifying. The attraction is to the strength he represents. The terror comes from the realization that this strength is autonomous and cannot be controlled. If she cannot control him, she cannot guarantee his stay. And this introduces a vulnerability that feels like a threat to her own security. The relationship is no longer a system she can manage through emotional inputs and outputs, but an organic bond that requires genuine, unmanipulated alignment. Confronted with this intolerable powerlessness, she will often rationalize her frustration by pathologizing his strength. He becomes cold, arrogant, or emotionally unavailable in her narrative. It is crucial to recognize that these labels are not accurate diagnoses of his character. They are confessions of her own inability to penetrate his frame. When she claims he is distant, what she is truly expressing is, "I cannot make your emotions revolve around me." She calls him heartless. She is admitting, "I cannot use guilt or obligation to bend your will." Her struggle is not with a deficiency in his capacity for connection, but with his profound refusal to allow his emotional world to be held hostage. His love is offered as a choice, not a need. And a choice cannot be controlled, only respected. A reality that, for someone accustomed to the levers of influence, feels like a form of powerlessness they are ill-equipped to handle. Confronted with a man whose foundation is impervious to her attempts at influence, a woman reaches a critical juncture, a fork in the road that demands a fundamental choice. This moment is the ultimate test of accountability, forcing her to decide what she truly values: the comfort of control or the challenge of a genuine partnership. The dynamic is no longer something she can passively observe or subtly manipulate. It requires an active, conscious decision that will define the future of the relationship. The first path is one of transformation. She rises. In this scenario, his unwavering strength does not push her away, but instead acts as a catalyst for her own growth. She begins to see his frame not as a wall keeping her out, but as the solid ground upon which something stable can be built. Recognizing that games and tests are not only ineffective but diminish her in his eyes, she consciously sheds them. The energy she once spent on creating chaos is redirected toward showing up authentically. She understands, perhaps for the first time, that his attention is not a given to be extracted, but a valuable resource that is earned through consistent, tangible value. She realizes that to hold a place in his world, she must bring peace, not drama, loyalty, not uncertainty, and a supportive partnership, not a constant demand for validation. In rising, she does not lose herself. She evolves into a more integrated and mature version, capable of standing beside a strong man without needing to break him. The second path is one of retreat. She runs, unable to tolerate the vulnerability and accountability that his independence demands. She chooses to resent his strength rather than match it. The requirement to operate on a plane of mutual respect, without the crutch of emotional leverage, feels like an unbearable burden. Consequently, she disengages, leaving in search of a more familiar dynamic. She retreats to the comfort of weaker men, those whose need for her provides a predictable and controllable environment. These are men who will validate her illusions, will allow her to dominate the emotional landscape, and who will grant her the superficial security of being needed, even at the cost of genuine respect. For the self-possessed man, this binary outcome is a win-win. If she rises, he gains a true partner who complements his strength with her own integrity, creating a relationship built on mutual respect rather than mutual neediness. If she runs, he loses nothing of real value. He simply loses someone who was fundamentally incompatible with his peace and purpose. His core identity remains unbroken and intact because his worth was never contingent on her presence or her choice. He is not destroyed by her departure precisely because he was never dependent on her staying. Her decision to leave merely confirms that she was not the partner his life required, and in doing so, it liberates him to continue his path, undisturbed and undiminished. The ultimate destination of this journey is not the manipulation of a relationship's dynamics, but the profound and unshakable mastery of the self. The archetype of the man who doesn't need her is not defined by a sterile emotional absence or a posture of arrogant superiority. On the contrary, this mastery is what liberates him to offer the purest, most potent form of love possible, a love rooted not in the fear of loss, but in the freedom of conscious choice. He is capable of deep connection precisely because he is not desperate for it. He chooses a partner, not to fill a void within himself, but as a conscious addition to an already complete and fulfilling life. His love is an offering, not a demand, a gift, not a transaction. This is the paradox that few grasp. By securing his own independence, he becomes capable of a more generous and unattached devotion. This state of being is the reclamation of a birthright. It is the understanding that your intrinsic value is not a commodity to be bartered for affection, attention, or validation. You learn that a partner's approval is far too unstable and fleeting a substance to serve as the foundation for your sense of worth. This realization is the moment you cut the invisible strings that others might use to puppet you through life. You cease to live as a supplicant in your own story and become the author, the protagonist, and the final judge. This manifests not as loud bravado, but as a quiet, grounded confidence that is impervious to external storms. You carry a steady presence that cannot be rattled by strategic silence, manufactured chaos, or threats of abandonment. You learn to love without the chains of clinging attachment, to walk away without the burden of guilt, and to stand firm in your truth without the need for apology. This inner sovereignty is the ultimate freedom and, paradoxically, the ultimate leverage in any relationship. It transforms the entire paradigm. You no longer audition for a role in someone else's life. You become the gatekeeper of your own. A woman realizes that to earn a place in your world, she must bring tangible, peaceful value. She understands that your presence is not an entitlement she can claim through mere beauty or fleeting affection, but a privilege that is maintained through loyalty, consistency, and a genuine contribution to your peace. You command respect, not through intimidation or control, but through the immovable dignity of your own presence. You make it clear that if what she offers is chaos, drama, and games, you will let her go without a second thought. Not as an act of punishment, but as an act of self-preservation. This is why a man who doesn't need her is the man who always wins. His victory is not measured by the conquest of another person, but by the triumphant mastery of his own psyche, his emotions, and his destiny. He wins because he has defied the conditioning that teaches men to seek their reflection in a woman's eyes. He has broken the cycle of giving away his power in exchange for the mere hope of love. His fulfillment is an internal state, generated by his alignment with his mission and his unwavering commitment to his own code. And once a man reaches this pinnacle of self-mastery, no woman, no relational game, and no societal illusion can ever truly own him again. He becomes the rarest of men, not a conqueror of others, but a sovereign of himself, eternally free because his peace was never theirs to give, and thus can never be theirs to take away. He stands as a complete system, and any love he gives or receives is not a necessity, but a chosen, and therefore infinitely more meaningful bonus.